Hello, good evening, and welcome to a regular board meeting of the East Windsor Regional School District Board of Education. Written advance notice of this meeting was provided at least 48 hours ago. Such notice provided the time, date, and location of this meeting and included the agenda to the extent it was known at this time. Notice of this meeting has been given in accordance with law. Minutes are being kept by the board secretary and will be made available promptly to any member of the public requesting them from the board secretary at 25A Leshen Lane, Hightstown, New Jersey. Minutes will be provided at cost and in accordance with board policy. Are there any board members present who believe this meeting to be in violation of the Open Public Meetings Act? There being none, we may proceed. In compliance with the fire code of the state of New Jersey, I call your attention to the emergency exits for this room, which are located in the back and the sides. Can someone make a motion, please?
Yes, making a motion in the absence of Paul Todd, Mark Daniels will be acting as board secretary this evening.
Is there a second?
Second.
Do we need to poll? Do we poll?
I guess it's a motion, so you probably should.
Poll the board, please.
There we go. Ms. Borgely?
Yes.
Ms. Lance?
Yes.
Ms. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Patel?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks? Yes. Ms. LaRusso?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C, please.
Having read the materials received, I move the agenda be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions? Poll the board, please.
Ms. Borgely?
Yes.
Ms. Lance?
Yes.
Ms. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Patel?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Ms. LaRusso?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I'm having a slight technical error. Item D.
Resolution executive session. Be it resolved that the East Windsor Regional School District may hold 2 closed sessions at this meeting. These closed sessions concern HIB report of October 30th, 2023, personnel, EWRSSA negotiations update, EWRSSA grievance. Minutes of these closed sessions will be made available to the public when the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
Is there a second?
Second.
Does anyone have any questions? Poll the board, please.
Ms. Borgely?
Yes.
Ms. Lance?
Yes.
Ms. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Patel?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Ms. LaRusso?
Yes. Next, we'll hear from our student representatives.
Thank you, Ms. LaRusso, and good evening to everyone as well. As we mentioned during our last meeting, Student Council ran a very successful homecoming week filled with a variety of spirit days, ultimately leading up to the pep rally where the seniors are now leading in class cup points after securing wins with their hallway decorating, lip sync, and spirit participation points. But the freshmen gave them a run for it with their spirit and jaw-dropping performance during the pep rally, and we cannot wait to see them grow with this excitement throughout the rest of their high school years. We also had an amazing homecoming dance after many years, and the cheer team did an excellent job hosting a well-planned, welcoming experience.
As you may have seen walking into the building today, Student Council just hosted our annual Haunted Hallways event, where various clubs and sports teams, such as Red Cross and the cross-country team, came together to decorate doors with Halloween themes. We saw so much excitement amongst the elementary schoolers who trick-or-treated throughout the halls. There was a little twist, however, as we added a bit of competition between each class council's door, where the kids inevitably picked the juniors as the winner, giving them class cup points. It was very close, with the seniors coming in second and the freshmen and sophomores coming in third and fourth, respectively.
On October 25th, the student body took the PSAT. This year, the test featured a different design, being online instead of the traditional paper version. We would like to commend the administration for how well the new test was incorporated, as the students taking the test were able to familiarize themselves with the new format during an activity period a week prior. This made it very easy for everyone to adjust the day of. While the test took longer than expected, administration was able to quickly send out a new schedule for the day.
As for the seniors, we didn't have to take the test this year and instead got to arrive at the school at 10:30. The class quickly got set up on the bleachers for our class photo and then entered the school at 11 for our first class of the day. The late arrival was definitely welcome, especially as many of us are in the midst of applying to college. This has been a stressful experience in the past few weeks as seniors were working to complete their early action applications before November 1st. Personally, I was able to submit all of my applications and felt a huge sense of relief after submitting my last one. I know that the rest of the seniors are looking forward to relaxing after they finish up. We again would like to thank our counseling department for being a huge help and easing our worries throughout this entire process.
Another thing seniors look forward to is our senior trip, which is a new possibility previous classes haven't received. Many of the students have expressed interest in making the trip an annual occurrence, and the senior class is hoping to be the first to kick off this tradition.
The fall season of sports has come to an end, with sports wrapping up each of their seasons over the past week. Each team played a great season, and we are excited to see what they accomplish next year. As for the seniors, we hope they enjoyed one final season with their Hightstown team. However, one senior is still competing. Jack Kane will be competing at the cross-country state championship this Saturday, and we wish him the best of luck. We also wanted to give a special mention to the marching band for receiving second place in their division at states, and the color guard for receiving first. This is a huge accomplishment, and we know they're rightfully very proud.
Although our fall sports are wrapping up, the Hightstown Forensic Debate Team is advancing to district championships for policy debate, and their affirmative team is debating against Robbinsville for a chance to win the championship trophy after many years. We are so proud to see them work hard with the new coach, Mr. Bergen, and we wish them luck for their championship match this Thursday.
In the future, we are looking forward to parent-teacher conferences on November 16th and the upcoming fall play, Jason and the Argonauts, where our drama club will be performing on November 17th and 18th, so be sure to get your tickets.
That concludes our report for tonight. Thank you everyone for your time and attention.
Thank you so much. That was very informative. I learned so much more from you guys than I do from my children that are in the high school. Does anyone have any questions? Next, we're going to have the spring assessment presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Each year, each school district in the state of New Jersey is required to provide a report to the board and community regarding the school district's performance on the state assessments. Just to remind everyone, for us, it's the NJSLA, but also the New Jersey graduation assessment as well. So tonight, members of our curriculum department will be providing updates regarding how our students fared, and we'll provide an overview of each of those assessments. With that said, I'll turn things over to Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, Ms. Sandy Small.
Thanks, Mark. I'll apologize for my voice already, guys, so if I start being scratchy, I apologize. So what we're going to try and go through is we're going to try and not do the hour-and-a-half presentation that you all love so much. I'm going to try to break things down as a district, and then, as Mark said, this is because it's a state requirement that we have to do, and then break it down to what it is that's important in East Windsor. And then at the end, you will see that there's an appendix that has a million more slides than what I'm going through now. So you could peruse that at your leisure and then work your way through. I'm not sure if you guys can't see, if you want to adjust, or you do have it on your computers, on your latest version as well. So as we go through this, just as a reminder, the first couple slides will be that the NJSLA is for English in grades 3 through 9. Math is in grades 3 through 8 and includes Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. And Science is grades 5, 8, and 11. The scale for the NJSLA, ELA, and Math, and when we get to Science and GPA, we'll go through those performance levels. This goes from a level 1 to a level 5, with level 1 saying that students did not yet meet expectations. Level 2, they're partially meeting. 3, they're approaching. 4, they met. And 5, they have exceeded the expectation. When we start with our literacy, when we go through looking at the district, this is where our students fell from grades 3 through 9 in ELA in each of the grade bands. If you really focus on those last 2 columns, you'll be able to go through and see the percentage of students who were far below and the students who were meeting or exceeding expectations. Those numbers do not add up to 100 because it negates those students who are approaching that can go on either level. The next slide is the more important, and I know some of you asked me, can I tell you the slide numbers? I apologize, I can't. I'll try to tell you the headings so you'll know where I am. So this is spring 2023 versus state. And this one, I think, is more important than the prior one because what we're able to see now is what do those, so we scored that as a district. What does that mean in comparison to the state? And what you will see is that grades 5, 6, and 8 are pretty much on par with where the state is. Again, we as an East Windsor team do not like us being on par with the state, but right now we've got to come back to that level playing field in order for us to move forward. What we will see here in ELA in grades 3 and 7, we are still far below, and there are 2 areas that we still have to work through. If we go to our next slide, which is the data 2022 versus 2023, because again, this is often a question, well, how did we do last year versus this year so we can see if there's any growth? What I will go through looking is in that red box is where the state was and East Windsor was last year in the differential. The blue box is this past year is in 2023. So as we go through looking, just what we just talked about in grades 3 and 7, what I will look at, and tell me if anybody has a question as to the numbers I'm referring to, I'll be more than happy to answer you at that point. In grade 3, what we will see is that the state data remained constant, which means it was at a 42.4 in 2022 and was at a 42 in 2023. The district, however, declined from a 36.9 to a 29.6. And then you will see something similar in grade 7, that the state rose by 3%, but the district fell by 6%. So those are those 2 grades that we're saying that we have an area of concern. When you look at grade 4, the state data rose slightly as the district data stayed flat on that one. If you look at grades 5, 6, 8, and 9, you're going to see some positive things. We're not there yet, but at least we're moving in the positive direction. So you're going to see in grade 5 that the state rose 3% and the district rose 4%. In grade 6, the state rose 1% and the district rose 15%. So that's an area that what we're doing in grade 6 is working. So we've got to make sure that we keep that projection going so we don't stay flat this coming year. In grade 8, the state rose 4% and we doubled that to 8%. In grade 9, the state rose at 3%, and again, we more than doubled that at 7%. Then if we look at ELA over the years, and what you will see is that first year, 2019, is prior to the pandemic, and then these are the 2 years post-pandemic. You'll see that grades 5, 6, and 8 are statistically equal to where the district was prior to the pandemic, which is nice to see. Now it's time for us to move forward. We now know those students have the base knowledge and we've got to move them forward. So that's what we're looking at there. And this is, if you remember what we talk about apples to oranges, this is really how the state does the comparison. They look at grade 3 over the years. We're going to look at our next slide, which for us is really important because now we're going to look at students to themselves, apples to apples. So if you look at this, I'm going to ask you to focus on the yellow in the meeting or exceeding expectations. What I'm focusing on are those 9th grade students who started with us in grade 3. So it was the very first group that took that test in 2017. And you will see that in 2017, those 3rd graders where 42% of them were meeting or exceeding expectations. And if you follow along the line as ninth graders, you will see that 48.4% of them met or exceeded expectations. And you'd be able to do that all the way through. I chose that ninth grade because that was the beginning and the final test that they would take with the NJSLA. And the color coding would be those students matching one another throughout. Okay? Then as we go over to the math, again, the very first slide you're going to see is how the district did. The next slide, spring 2023 versus the state, you're going to see grades 3 and 5 are comparable to the state. What you will see is grades 7 and 8 are far below. Now, we can traditionally turn and say, well, that's because we have so many students who are in our accelerated and double accelerated. That's not really the case here. There's a concern we have here for 7th and 8th grade, whether it's our course 2 and course 3 students or our pre-algebra and algebra and geometry students. So those numbers are a little bit of a cause for us to say we had to take a pause and figure out what we're going to do. Then our next slide, if we once again we look at where we were last year versus the state and where we are this year. Those first green arrows that you look at, they just feel like they're floating in space, really are going to be that grade 3 and that grade 6. And where you'll go through seeing that is that the state remained constant in grade 3, but the district rose by 6%. And in grade 6, the state data rose 3% and the district rose 10%. So you're going to see those are two areas that were like, okay, we're moving in the right direction in there. What you will see is that in grade 4, the district rose by 5% and district stayed flat. Grade 5 was pretty much a wash. The the state rose by 4% and the district rose by 3%. In grade 7, state and district both remained pretty flat, but in the grade 8, the state rose by 1% and the district fell slightly, so that's pretty much a wash also. What's important to see on this is that if you look at the Algebra 1, the state data, and when I say put Algebra 1 and geometry in here, this includes the entire district, which is both both middle school and the high school, and the middle school is 7th and 8th graders. So you'll see that in Algebra 1, the state data remained flat and the district data rose by 4%. Okay, and then if you look in the appendix, you'll be able to see a lot more for 7th, 8th, and high school where that happened. And then geometry, we had a really nice bump in geometry. The state went up by 6% and the district went up by 17%. The area of concern here is Algebra 2. Algebra 2, we dropped 20 percentage points. Our concern here is that these are 9th graders in Algebra 2, which are double accelerated students who dropped. That's an area of major concern for us and something that we're looking through on there. When we go, once again, comparing apples to oranges, you'll be able to see the trajectory throughout the years. What I will tell you is that we're going to see some areas that we're closing the gap in some of these grades, but we're still behind where we were prior to the pandemic. One of the areas I'm going to ask you to look at is the focus on grade 3. And if you have the most updated version, if you just clicked it, you'll have this data on here. If you look at grade 3, back in 2022, and this is combining the meeting and exceeding, you will see grade 3 had 37.4% who were meeting or exceeding. This year, they are 43.5%. So you'll see a nice jump there. We're not happy about 43.5%, but we're looking at where are we moving in the right direction. And then in grade 6, the same thing, from a 20.7% meeting or exceeding to a 30.1% this year. All right. This next slide is a little bit harder to see because we're not quite comparing apples to apples, but we're going to try and do the best that we can in 8th grade. And this is where I'm going to have to tell you the one line that I have on here. You're going to say, Sandy, your numbers aren't accurate. When I talk about in 2023, I'm going to tell you why that number looks different than what you're going to measure it as. Here I'm going to ask you to look at the pink, which is going to be our current 8th grade. And if you look at them when they were in 3rd grade, what the level 4 and level 5 were, you will see that 60% of them were meeting or exceeding expectations. If you follow that trajectory, you say, oh my gosh, we're at a 5.3. Don't panic that much, but keep the panic going. When we include our algebra and geometry students who are in 8th grade, we're only at a 25.6% meeting or exceeding expectations. So that algebra and geometry, it's hard to decipher in the data that's there because that includes the middle school and the high school. But when I disaggregate it, it comes out to 25.6% of those 8th graders are meeting. So we have lost a lot of ground with that group of students for math. Now we're going to go to high school GPA. And the GPA, just as a reminder, is the 11th grade class that will take this, who are current seniors. This becomes a lot of on this page, so I'm going to try and break down as much as I can. So what I tried to put on here for you is how the state scored last year versus how it is this year, and the same thing for the district, so you can see a little bit of a comparison. What you will see with the state, with the ELA, 80.5% of the state passed the GPA this year, whereas the district was 85.2%. So we're 5 percentage points above, which was a nice thing. But when we break down what courses our students are in, it's very clear to see that our students who are in AP and honors, 98% of them pass this NJGPA with no issue. When we come down to academic, our academic students are pretty much on par with the state. Our standard level students, we need to be able to move the rigor a little bit more to be able to get them to be successful on this. When we go to math, this page is much longer, but the very first thing I want to bring to your attention is that top right box. If you noticed on that last screen, we talked about the ELA for the state was 80.5% passing. For math, it's 55% passing. So there's a big disconnect on who in the state is going through passing each of them. So I also question is, are we testing what our standards are saying? So in ELA, we have 80% of our state passing. In math, we have 55% of our state passing. So there's some disconnect that's happening in my eyes, but if we go through and look at, okay, so how did our students do? So we are below the state in math in the NJGPA, but if you look for at our students who are in honors or advanced classes as juniors, you will see that they passed it in 86.6%. Our students who are below level, and what you will see here is unlike ELA, they're not all in ELA 11. They are in various levels based on when they came into district, which I'm giving you a precursor to something that we're looking at. We have some students who are in Algebra 1 that are taking the NJGPA. We have students in geometry taking the NJGPA. We have Algebra 2 students taking the NJGPA. We have pre-calc kids, we have calculus students, and we have AP calculus students. So we have a variety of students that are taking the same test in 11th grade and are all scored on the same exact assessment. So that's a little bit of a difference from the ELA on here. When years ago, if you remember, when the Achieve NJ came out, they started doing the end of course Algebra 1, which was an equal playing field. This is not for all of our kids. If they have not quite gotten beyond that Algebra 2, they are at a disadvantage with this assessment. This is a really busy slide. I'm going to ask you to, I'm going to try and take a piece at a time. This is the high school years in district comparison because I thought this was very, very telling as we go through looking at this. So what you will see here is that I'm going to just take the very top box. This is how our students did in ELA as a state, then as the total, which would be our district. But then I broke our students up into those students who were with us prior to the pandemic and those students who have come to district post-pandemic, okay? And this says a lot about how our students are faring and growing if they are with us for the duration of their education versus if they're coming in somewhat more recently in their education. So that's how this is broken down. You'll see in those really small boxes, year by year, you'll be able to see the overlay. So what you will see is that for that 9th grade class only, over 25% of those students came in district post-pandemic. That's a huge percentage of our kids that fall into that. And what we will notice is our students who were with us prior to the pandemic are pretty much on par with where the state scored. But what you will see, which is more stunning, is that our students who were with us prior to the pandemic versus those who have come post-pandemic, our prior students have outscored by 26 percentage points those who have come post. So I'm hoping I'm using all those terms, everybody's okay with me because I'm going back and forth. And then if the second group of data that you have here is grade 10, you will see a very similar thing here. So what you will notice here is that we are below, regardless of which group that you're looking at, we are below, and I have to backtrack 1 second. When I looked at that 9th grade students, this is our current 9th graders based on the 8th grade scores that they took last year, just so that you're with me here. And then when we look at our current 10th grade students, it's based on the NJSLA 9 test. You will once again see that more than 20% of our student population in 10th grade are students who have come to us post-pandemic. And then you will also notice that our students who were with us prior scored 20 percentage points better than our students who have been with us only since the pandemic. Our next slide, which is, I didn't do grade 11 here purposefully because there is no assessment to be able to compare. That group would not have had it, but our 12th graders would have taken the NJGPA. And what you will see here that the student on 75.5%, if you went through for those students who were prior, they were at a 79.3%, which is greater than what the state scored. And then post-pandemic was at a 51.9. So you will see a 28 percentage point differential for our students who have been with us versus those who have not. Those of you who remember and listened to board meetings 8-10 years ago, what you will notice is that we talked about 25% of our population being less than 3 years. Well, we're starting to see that once again. And that's when we have to start making sure that we are addressing the needs of our students coming in to try and fill some of those gaps. And we're back there once again. The next slide is just to be able to give you an overview of our demographics of our students pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic. And you will see as an overall high school, 21% of our students have been in district, came in district post-pandemic. And you keep on saying post-pandemic, I should say at that 2020, so it's during the pandemic, if you will, for some of them. What is very catching, if you look at this, so just that everybody knows what those headings are for each of those. If you go across from top to bottom, our demographics from left to right are Black, Asian, white, Hispanic, and multi. And then once you go past the double line, students with disabilities, multilingual learners, which are former ESL, economically disadvantaged, and non-economically disadvantaged. So I want to bring your attention over to the multilingual. If you look for our high school prior to 2020, we had a 6% of our population was multilingual. Within the last 3 years, we have now risen to a 14.7% multilingual with that population. So that also speaks volumes to us as to some of the things that we have to do. And I'll bring your attention back to remembering those numbers, and I'll do the same thing for the middle school with some of the things that we are moving to be able to address some of these concerns. The next slide is the middle school years in district comparison, very similar to the high school. You'll see that we took out the current 6th grade, which is based on the 5th grade data. You will see that in this case, which was very interesting, that those students post-pandemic versus prior, really very slight, almost negligible. So the younger they are, it's not being affected. It's as they get older, this data's changing. If you go to our 7th grade, you see a major change in how this happens. So if you'll see those students prior, where 53% of our students were meeting or exceeding expectations, whereas those who came in post-pandemic were 35.9%. Our next slide, middle school years, if we look at our 8th graders, we will also see, again, a disparage a good range between those post and those prior, 47.4 and 33.3. And our next slide, again, it becomes the demographics. And what you will notice here in the middle school is more than 25% of those students have only come in district since 2020. And again, if you look here at the multilingual learners, we went from 10.7% to 17% for that population. And economic disadvantage also went up by 3% over the last 3 years. So I'm going to put a little asterisk now. I'm going to talk about science. I'm going to tell you it was very difficult to tell you much about the NJSLA science. And the reason I'm going to say that to you is that when I get this data and I see the state says that fewer than 30% of the population pass this test, I don't even know how to compare where we are. 30% tells me, is there a flaw in the test? Are we testing on standards that we don't have? So even if we were beating the state and having 35%, I wouldn't be happy. But right now, well, that's what you're going to see. So I'm presenting this to you because this is part of what we need to go through doing. That's where this data is. You will see a disconnect within the demographics, and you will see this throughout, even within the appendix that you'll see this. You will see something very similar in grade 8. 18% of the state, 18.6% to be exact, passed the NJSLA 8. I don't know how to compare us to state data that says that. So I apologize if I'm being a little off, but I don't know what to say with that one. And then the NJSLA 11, again, less than 30% passing that. So now we talk about what actions are we looking at. I'm going to just give a brief little thing, and then I have 3 supervisors who are going to come in and just very briefly talk about some of the areas that we're working on. So one of the things, and I'm going to steal a little bit of Mark's thunder because I know he's going to say something with it, we are bringing a company in called Varsity Tutors to help support us in trying to bridge the gap, if you will, for some of our students, and you'll be getting more information of that over the next month as we go through and start bringing it out to our families. In the high school, we are starting up college and career readiness that we did prior to the pandemic. A lot of information will be coming forth to you for that, as well as to getting our students self-sufficient in the high school, how they're going to go manage their time, their ways of being able to study, asking for help, things like that. Title I programs are resuming in the middle school, and for phase 1, we're focusing on ELA, math, and SEL, so that our students who still have some struggles that maybe aren't necessarily math or ELA, we're helping them as well. In some of our schools, we have our principals are working to analyze the data with their teachers and to be able to say, here's what the focus is, and give the teachers some time to be able to work through their own data there. Then in special ed in 612, one of the things they're doing there is to reading across the curriculum. And what's nice with what's happening here is the teachers are really going to each take a chapter and to be able to turnkey some strategies that everybody doesn't have to know everything. We can go through helping each other. And I did skip one, and I skipped one purposefully because this is one that I want to focus on just for a minute, is SIOP strategies. One of the things that we see in district is that our ELL, or multilingual learner population, is ever increasing. So we as a district have decided that we are going to train as many of our teachers as we can using the SIOP strategies. And we had our first training for half of our middle school and high school ESL and sheltered teachers in October, and we have another one for the rest of those teachers in November. And I actually attended all 3 days of the workshop, and I'll tell you, it was something that was eye-opening. Our teachers then, in turn, invited the multilingual learner supervisor, as well as myself, in their classrooms to show the strategies and the components that they have implemented. And our teachers have taken grasp of what's happening here. But one of the good things that I'm going to say to you is that the strategies that they are learning are good for all of our struggling learners. It's not just the multilingual learners that are going to benefit. So as a district, our goal, at least my goal, and sometimes I try to reach the stars too quickly, is that we wanted to train all of our teachers this year. We were not able to do that. So we had to go through and, first of all, take the group of teachers who we could have the most impact with now. So, as I said, in November, that will be those training for the middle school and high school who are ESL or sheltered teachers will be trained. And then in December, our bilingual and ESL teachers will be trained in December for K-5. And then our plan is in the summer to train as many teachers as we can for the strategies so that by September, everyone will have the opportunity to be able to implement these SIOP strategies throughout. We will also be working through these in PDs in each of our department meetings monthly, trying to make sure that we get these strategies to as many of our teachers as we can because they are good for all of our teachers. So the gentleman that we had come in he did not stand up here talking. He had the teachers up and doing exactly what he wanted them to do in their classrooms. So it was one of those well worth the time and energy that was put into it workshops in there. So Kevin, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Thank you. This is good to be here. Good to see everyone. I just want to thank you. I work with great teachers and unbelievable administrators to make some of these things happen because they're not easy. We had talked last year. We started noticing some of our data for that third grade class, and we tried putting things into place. We used our personalized learning block, and one of the things that we noticed was that at the end of the day, it wasn't as effective. So one of the things that we worked through this year was re-looking at our master schedule to move the personalized learning block in the morning. And what we also realized was we were catching our students too late for intervention. So one of the things that we did at the end of last year is we went into the second grade classes and did assessments for students so that when they came into schools, we already had things in place for them, specifically in the phonics. We spent some time looking at the science of reading. Lucy Hawkins got fired. It's amazing to me. With that being said, so we have in both schools now 2 classes of Tier 1 from phonics to reading classes, as well as a Tier 2 pullout. These were all students who we identified during that testing, and we have things in place for them now, so we're hoping that those are helpful for us. We also continued to do our 4th grade regrouping of math, but one of the things that we did was we offer a continuum of service for those students who were in the class last year in 4th grade. That interventionist pushes into their 5th grade class to support. You'll also notice in the appendix that we included our enrichment programming. And one of the things that we're looking to do is make sure that students who can exceed expectations, theoretically score 5, that we have things in place for them as well to meet and exceed the expectations. Another thing that we wound up doing is re-looking at our literacy block to create what we call a structured literacy block. So in the appendix, you'll see the breakdown of what those actually are. And one of the reasons to do that is we have teachers who might need specific types of PD, whether it's word work, grammar, and it's an easier way for us to provide differentiated professional development for our teachers. So we're hoping that we are able to do that this year as well. And lastly, we put here our professional development. We just had a consultant come in. Her name is Marlene Hember, and she wrote the book Edu Protocols. One of the reasons we wanted to infuse more protocols and thinking routines into our classes is so that teachers can get more formative assessment data to provide feedback to the students in a more rapid pace, because it's through that feedback that students will grow. And if we're waiting for just summative assessments to then give feedback, we've lost opportunity. So getting some of those things in place, we think, is an important part of what we're working on. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So starting with the middle school, one of the things that we had in place is we've had structured literacy. We have had tiered interventions, so we're sharing those with you tonight. They hit different levels of need that are aligned to the data that Sandy shared with you earlier. At our tier 3 level, one of the things we've noticed, and we did a complete audit last year using our automaticity data, looking at our data from our benchmarks, looking at our data from our writing portfolio, and engaging teachers in looking at student work. And we realized we needed a greater press on not just comprehension constructors, but automaticity, multisyllabic decoding, looking at phonemic components in the 6th grade and 7th grade classes in the middle school. So we did a lot of work this year infusing into the classes not only our rewards program, but bolstering that up with continuous phonics programming through Lexia. And Lexia has another component to it called Power Up, which then transfers that over to comprehension. So we're excited about that. We kicked off the year this year with both of those components in place. We're training additional teachers. And if you look at Tier 2, our next level up, that's a lot of our students who have gaps in their learning, but may be presenting in class as at grade level in certain areas. We're bringing Lexia into those programs as well. Last year, we had a push-in teacher, and one of the difficulties we had with that was their ability to service in 6 different classes, make strong connections with students, and be able to transfer that over in instruction. So we feel strongly this year that bringing in that program, giving the teachers that training, and having them work continuously each day with those students in their literacy block, that will be a good response to that need. Finally, we have Tier 1, and we put focused targets in the Tier 1. We're really looking this year at not just using after-school interventions, but bringing those interventions into the time we know we have the students, which is during the instructional day. We looked at the evidence tables that came back from Sandy's data. Those break down the skills and really critically tell us which skills are needed as focus points at each level. To that end, I heard Kevin mention they're doing a lot with thinking routines and edu protocols. We have those up in the middle school, so it'll be exciting to build bridges with those programs. We have our G&T utilize those, and some of those students appear, as Sandy shared, they have gaps or they fell from exceeding expectations down to meeting expectations. We want to make sure that we have interventions for them as well. So we're bringing those in, and we're excited to really kind of revamp our program post-pandemic at the Tier 1. At the high school level, we're looking there at increasing exposure to critical reading skills through the infusion of mentor texts that are much more diverse in Lexile. And we added those this year. If you remember, you previewed curriculum a couple weeks back. We added titles that represent an arc, going lower than the Lexiles we had before, going higher than the Lexiles we had before, to really reflect the needs of our students and making sure that the reading skills aligned to those texts are what we're seeing coming back on evidence tables and what we're seeing in works analyses. We have spent a great deal of time on professional development, both this summer and throughout the year, to really make sure that our teachers are looking at the student results, looking at the pacing of their instruction, and making sure that students are setting goals and getting feedback that is aligned to the skills that we're presenting in those texts. Benchmarks were also revised this year in response. We are moving our benchmarks more to a reading focus because we have those longer processed writing pieces in the curriculum. Our benchmark reading this year will focus on transferable skills. And that's exciting because up with the new standards, there's a big focus on the reading and history and reading and science standards coming in back into the ELA, and having benchmarks where we can utilize those skills across content in the high school is exciting. That includes their science classes, their social studies classes, their business classes. And it really fits nicely with what the universities are asking in terms of evidence-based reading. Finally, we realigned curricula to prioritize text interaction and close reading. We're getting much closer to the mark of where we were pre-pandemic. Sandy shared, we're moving that needle closer and exposing the students to those critical skills. We want to make sure that we're getting those students and bringing them up who were traditionally, prior to the pandemic, meeting those expectations. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Okay, so I'm going to talk specifically about what's going on in the 6 through 12 math programs. The first thing, and I know Sandy talked to you guys about our PSYOP training. We had our first round in October, and we have another round coming up next week. And I can't tell you how positive the feedback has been. with the middle school and the high school math teachers and science teachers, talking about the idea that a lot of the strategies that they learned are analogous to good teaching, with a lean towards how to support our multilingual learners. In addition, it opened their eyes to a lot of things that maybe they were not aware of in terms of who their students were and how it is that they learn. So we're looking forward to this second round of SIOP training. We're looking forward to seeing more of our teachers integrate those strategies within their classroom. One of the things that I have asked the 6 through 12 math teachers to integrate into their practices, we started right around interim report, first marking period interim report with the middle school teachers, and more recently with the high school teachers, is for them to provide some instruction to their students on what goal setting looks like, asking students to look at how they're doing in class, look at what actions they are taking that are supporting success, and what actions that they might be taking that are discouraging success, or what actions are they not taking and as a result are discouraging success. So talking to students about goals that are specific and measurable, and we're actually asking them at this stage to focus on short-term goals. And then our teachers are meeting with these students several times over the course of a marking period and asking students to touch base with what those goals are, to really encourage those students to take ownership of their own success, and recognizing that by creating short-term goals for things that they might see as meaningless to their long-term success, they can actually move closer towards a successful completion of a marking period, a successful completion of a course, or a successful completion of their 12-year programs. So, after-school programs. Again, Sandy talked a little bit about this. We have a middle school after-school program that is launching this week that will provide students in that those level 1s and 2s that we saw in the student NJSLA data, to provide them access to supplemental supports. And then through the CCR program in the high school, we are going to be also providing access to additional math support in those programs. Within the middle school specifically, because the middle school feeds the high school, and therefore strengthening that 6 through 8 math program hopefully will allow our students greater success through the 9 through 12. We have recruited a staff developer to come in and work directly with our teachers. Some of the things that our staff developer has been working with teachers on is sort of unpacking the curricula, figuring out ways that we can move through the material that provides students access to spiral instruction. So rather than focusing in on a single content area, teaching it well, and then moving on, how can we continue to bring that idea back in front of the students so that they have multiple opportunities to either reinforce learning or to go back and scoop up those students that did not learn the material in the first place. So working with the curriculum to make sure that all students have access to learning at multiple places throughout each course, but also looking at the idea that in all of our grade level courses, we have accelerated students and we have struggling students. We don't accelerate every single student into some of our advanced courses, and we really need to focus in on within a single course, and I'm talking specifically about course 1, which is our 6th grade class, course 2, and course 3, especially making sure that we have tiered instruction and resources for tiered instruction available to all of our teachers. So again, our staff developer has done a really good job of kind of reaching out to teachers, figuring out where problem areas might be, and then offering resources that might allow them to deliver tiered instruction across those grade level classes. Course 3, as you saw from the data, is an area of particular focus. One of the struggles with Course 3 is that the standards are very broad, and at the same time that we are trying to make sure that we address all of the standards in the 8th grade NJSLA, we are also trying to prepare our students to be ready for 9th grade, for Algebra 1 for some of our students, and again for some of those accelerated classes. So we are looking more closely with that Course 3 curriculum to make sure that we have resources to support every learner, from the struggling learners to the advanced learners within Course 3, but also that we fine-tune how we present that content to our students so that we are hitting both sides, making sure that they are prepared for the NJSLA, but maybe more importantly, making sure that they're prepared for high school learning. With a focus on the middle school math program, we're hoping that we can kind of take that and leverage it into modifications that we need to make in the future for the high school programs. Thank you.
So I can finish up with the next 50 slides if we want to go through there. I'm going to go through and really just summarize three big takeaways I want you to have from here. One is the idea that we have already started implementing some strategies to help our struggling learners. Even though it's SIOP, it's really good for all. The second one is, Mary had mentioned it, and it's something that we have to ensure that we're doing across the curriculum, is that now that we are post-pandemic, we have to make sure all of our curriculum documents are coming back to the rigor that it was post-pandemic. We've given our students and our teachers time to be able to help fill these gaps, and where those gaps aren't, we're going to have to find ways to do that as we make sure that that rigor is there. And then thirdly, knowing how rapidly our population is changing, not losing focus that we have 20 to 25% of our buildings are students who are not East Windsor grown, and we have to make sure that we put programs into place to make sure that we can get them to fill the gaps and be able to bring them up to their counterparts who have been here. And with that, I will try to answer any questions you may have.
Can I just, before we open it up for questions, Mark, could we possibly also add this for old business if there's board members that want to review the slides in the appendix, and maybe we could bring it up at the next meeting?
Definitely. We'll leave it on for like the next few.
Sorry. So if anybody has questions.
Thanks for adding that, Nicole, because, yeah, this is always a lot for us to digest. And we go home, we think of 20 other questions, or maybe we should have asked a question differently. Right off the top, I have one a comment. So
Tina, can you bring your microphone down a little bit?
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Is that better? Okay. So right off the top, I have two. One was that 6 through 12, we mentioned student goal setting and ownership of success. Is that something we would consider doing at all grade levels? Or you want to start it in the high school?
So
I don't want to overstep my bounds, but I don't know how else to ask that question.
So Tina, one of the reasons that came into place, if you remember a couple years back, we had a gentleman by the name of Tim Cleary. Mm-hmm. He came in, and a lot of that was self-regulated learning. So that started with the middle school math people, and then we hit the pandemic. So now Jody is trying to make sure we're bringing it back to those people who have been trained, getting that to a point that those teachers are comfortable because they have been trained, and then we can see where the impact is and whether or not we can go forward. So we are purposefully keeping it to a group that is like that group that had been trained already.
Okay, so checking on our efficacy. Okay, thank you. The second one, I think it was Kevin who mentioned this is through the 3 to 5, and maybe because it's the 3 to 5 group, it was mentioned that we do intervention assessment at grade 3, and we're moving it back to grade 2. Is that the first time we're doing an intervention assessment, or am I misinterpreting what was said?
No, so typically, and Kevin, if I say anything, where are you, Kevin? Oh, so typically they would do that when the students come in 3rd grade. And what Kevin wanted to do this year is not take the time from 3rd grade instruction. Let's try and do that in 2nd grade so that when they come in, we're already ready for them and we know what their needs are. So this is the first year, Kevin. Yes? No? You want to add more? You're good?
So we are not testing prior to that, like not in kindergarten?
Oh, no,
not
no, no.
This
was actually for that.
Specific?
Mark, help me with the name I want. That grade, the change in grades.
Transition.
Thank you. That transition grade, sorry, my brain is. So that transition grade to go into that, really in by third grade, they say phonics, they should have that handle. So what Kevin's group in 3-5 are trying to do is, what are those students who don't have their handle on it, so that we make sure that we start giving them things from the get-go on that one. So that is part of, if you remember anything about the STAR early literacy, a lot of that is the phonics component, which is the K2. And by second grade, we don't typically give the early lit, we go back to STAR reading. So all of that is embedded in everything they do in K2.
Okay, so that's a new data point for that transition year.
Yeah, so it's, I don't want to say it's a new data point, it's different in how they're getting that data point. Rather than wait until September, October, November, they're getting it prior to the students coming in.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Prior to reconfiguring the district, the students would have been in the school. So then it just became one of the things where after we reconfigured getting people to go, it just needed to work out some of the logistics.
Okay. Okay, I understand now. I was just making sure that wasn't the only time we were doing intervention, and that didn't make any sense in my head that that would be the case, but I just wanted to clarify. Thank you. I'm sure I'll have many more questions next time.
You know, thinking back to at least the past 5 years, it seems like a lot of the presentations on data are not like a positive night, and that was, you know, going back before the pandemic. So I guess, is there anything, and every year, of course, we have plans for how to better the learning. Is there any overarching approach to the teaching or education or the getting the students to want to learn that maybe have been seen as trends over these years that didn't work and that have changed, or maybe that have worked and that we want to continue rather than these specific changes for this year?
So, Colleen, two things. So, one, what I'm hoping that happened for this one is that's why I tried to bring in what we did, how the growth last year versus the growth this year. What I want you to see, we are moving in the right direction. So it's not all that everything is negative. We're just not there yet, but we are moving. And for us, the more we can move that handle, like you'll notice in math, there is a greater need for that hope post-pandemic drive than ELA, whether kids were reading during the pandemic and because the on-screen math wasn't, like I can't even tell you what that is yet, but what I can tell you is that our teachers are really trying to hone in on what is working for you that maybe isn't working for Jean. Let's talk together. So, you know, Kevin talked a lot about, you know, like he has a lot of good teachers that he's working with. I'm going to tell you, we have a lot of really good teachers in this district, and they do look to each other to see what's happening. You know, we do have some areas of concern, like some of them, if we have students that are here, 25% of our population was not with us. So now each of our teachers, which is why I said for this year, one of our goals has to be, how are we going to help support those students that are new to our district because they don't have those prior skills that our other students that are coming up with. So what we did try to present now is that when the supervisors were giving me things they're doing, I said, but let's try and focus on what's new for this year. So if you look in the appendix, you should see a lot of things that are interventions and or advancements that are happening throughout, that have been happening and they keep on moving. We tried to focus on the things that we're doing based on the data that we just did. So there are some things that are working really well. There's some things that we have to throw away and start from scratch, and there's some things we have to refine. So that's in every year. One of the things that bring into your attention is that the state, we just, and I just like sighed there for a moment because we just adopted all of this new curriculum that you board approved last week, and all the supervisors over the next 2 months are going to trainings that the state has now changed or adopted new standards for ELA and math, K-12. So most of us have workshops that we're going through the state over the next month or two, and we're then yet going to be saying to you, we're going to have to go through and board approve things. So there's some times that we're trying to catch up, and I'm going to tell you, sometimes what I just shared with you with the science, we can't make heads or tails. So those things that are good, we are continuing to do. Sometimes we have to make adjustments for other things. Sometimes there's way too many standards that we're trying to teach in a grade level, and we have to choose what are the foundational standards for success for the next level. So, I mean, we can't, I mean, it'd be great to hand somebody a math textbook or an English textbook and say, here, teach them, make sure every student in your class knows everything from page 1 to page 999 by June. That's not the way our students learn. We've got to be able to go through and do that. So there are many things that are really working, and I hope the data was able to show you that. We're not there yet, but we are moving in the right direction, which is a positive thing for us.
Thank you.
Hi, oh, sorry.
I have one question for you. I'm looking at the data. Thank you. It's very detail-oriented. I appreciate that. Just a question on one of the slides where you had indicated we had a drastic increase in increment in all the grade level except grade 7, where we slide downward. And I know we're using the same process for the 6th grader and 8th grader. Why are we not getting the target for the 7th grade if we're using the same approach? The demographic is about this aligned at the 6th, 7th, and 8th. Why is the 7th grade not showing best improvement versus other grade levels?
I'm going to tell you that's a very good question. That is something we are looking into. What I will tell you, which I don't want to use this as, we have sometimes a lot of turnover. We have teachers who are in or out for many reasons. This past year, we had 6th and 7th grade. We had a lot of that happening. There are things that we've got to do better with, and there's some things that are outside of our control. Those reasons why 7th grade is taking that dip, that's going to be something that we're going to be looking into that I can't tell you. If I wish I could say I had this magic ball that this is what it is and we can fix it. I don't know the answer to that yet. It's something we are looking through. Okay.
Thank you.
And I wish I didn't have to be as honest as that, but.
So the 7th grade that took the dip, they're now the 8th grade, right?
Correct.
Are you going to be following them to see how they do, because they're in 8th grade and they're going to have a big transition next year? So are we going to be following them to see how they do, especially in 9th grade?
Yeah, so well, actually, good point, Nicole. So one of the things we will be looking at that we do look at their data now that we have for September, like what is the summer slide? We have already targeted those students that we believe had a bigger summer slide than the typical, to be able to provide supports that Mary and Jody both spoke about, offering after-school programs for Title I. They will be part of varsity tutorings as we go through and see that there's still some skills that are there. So we will look at their September, their January data to say what other supports can we give them during the school day. I wish I could say to you magically that any student who needs an after-school program is able to stay. They can't, so we've got to find targets that can either support them at home or to be able to say what can we do during that time that we own, and that's some of the things that the supervisors are working through.
Can we also, I don't know how to word it. Will there be, not that there isn't thought, but so when these kids now in 8th grade that'll be going, because of that dip and everything, when they're going into 9th grade, will there be some consideration into the classes that they're placed in also, and maybe some prep or whatever you need to do, just to make sure that they're placed appropriately?
So Nicole, the first thing I'm going to say to you is that my hope would be is we put a lot of interventions that we have this year will prevent them from being in the same spot at the end of this year. So once the mid-year happens, we get to see where the data is at that point, and that's the data that we would use to make suggestions for placement in 9th grade, and then we revisit that again in May once they've had another 4 months to be able to be instructed, and then we use that again to determine where their placements are, and within those placements become some of the supports that have to take that we have to be able to provide for them. And, part of the Title I, we do look at Saturday academies. Oftentimes we'll get students who are willing to advance to come to that. Those students who are struggling don't necessarily want to come to that. They will be some of the areas where we talk about varsity tutors to be able to do that more one-on-one tutoring, to give them some of those supports that they need. So we have some interventions that are in place already, ready to go as the year progresses. So my hope is that we're not going to have that many that are going to be in that category.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It seems like the 20 to 25% of students coming from another district is a point that maybe is going to be addressed or might explain some of the data. Do we know what type of schools those students were in prior, whether it's in-state, another country, and how that compares to here?
Well, I can answer the first question. We do know exactly where they came from, whether it's, most of them are from other countries. Several are from other states, but not, we have a couple that are from New Jersey schools, but most of them are from either other states, but the majority are from outside of the country. How they fare, their curriculum fares to us, we can only say in New Jersey schools. Some of our schools that we have some familiarity, if they come from Virginia, we're not going to have any problems with those kids here. When they're coming from other countries, we struggle with getting sometimes documents to even know what they took. So that's a struggle for us. So we can't always say that we know where they came from. But we own them. We've got to be able to give them what they need to be successful.
Thank you. And I know you can't answer this tonight, but maybe briefly, how do you go about figuring out all those different students, all their different individual needs?
Well, we know who the students are. That's the first, and we know exactly where they come from because that's part of the intake. Right. Their individual needs, really through some of our assessments. Our STAR assessment is a phenomenal tool to be able to help us, but now it's a matter of how do we implement some of these needs and adjustments and challenges and skills into the classroom when we own them. And that becomes a really hard task for our teachers. If I have 25 students and 20 of them are at grade level, and then I have 2 that are above and these 3 that are 5 years below, 3 years below, 2, how do we go through honing in on their skills to be able to bring them up? Those are some of the things that we've got to work through because that's a challenge for a teacher. We can't just expect that that's just going to happen, organically. It's something that we have to really be able to help motivate students to be able to get that, because you brought that in. How do we motivate students? We've got to make them understand and lead them to understand that this education will be able to help them to be successful later in life.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Sandy? Thank you so much.
I did actually, Nicole.
Okay.
Sorry. I've been sitting here trying to, again, how to formulate this. So I'm looking at the disparities of the ELA and the math. And I'm looking back. So say take our current 9th graders who are struggling in math. They were in 5th grade at the time when we kind of went out. So, and I don't even want to say it out loud, but are we looking at any of those learning losses that are still affecting this set of students? Because it seems to correlate somewhere in kindergarten when this took for ELA.
I have a question, Tina, before
Yes.
I can. So you're saying the 9th grade math. Tell me what you mean by 9th. Are you talking about algebra,
Our
geometry?
current 9th graders, so it was 8th grade.
Oh, I apologize. You're talking about that 5.3%? Gotcha.
The
Okay.
difference. So like, if we go back in time where we were out on pandemic, these students were in 5th grade at that time, right, for math. I'm just trying to think if there's any correlation between the two. Maybe I will rephrase this and ask this the next time.
That's okay.
Because I have
There are a lot of
circles and
correlations
boxes,
as
and
to
there are
gaps.
correlations, yes. So how are we, we supported them in the beginning. Can we continue to support? Like, there's definitely some things that they didn't grasp at that foundational level, and how do we extrapolate what they're missing to support them now?
That's where some of that one-on-one tutoring and that one-on-one help and supports are going to have to come into play because their needs are going to be unique to somebody else in that classroom.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again to Sandy and your team for that presentation. Next, superintendent report.
Good evening, everyone. I will just echo your sentiments there by thanking Sandy and the curriculum department for the presentation on the annual data. I don't want to regurgitate a lot of what was said tonight, but what I will say is, we are making some strides. Obviously, we do have some challenges ahead of us. I will say, though, that Tonight was probably, although it was pretty comprehensive, very comprehensive, it doesn't tell the complete story. So I do think that, I'm very much appreciative of the commitment of our team, including our teachers who are dealing directly with our students day in and day out to try to meet the needs of our students. And I do believe that we are making some gains in some specific areas. Look, I could make this very simplistic because I think we some of these issues are complex, but I do believe that in any school district, some key recipes to success are a strong, relevant curriculum that is standards-based. Obviously, we need to make sure that we have a kind of a cadre of what we believe are best practices or high-yield instructional practices. And obviously, we need to make sure we have the best teachers that we can definitely find. So we'll continue to strive to meet the needs of our students. I wish we had a magic wand to create, every student showing some level of growth and meeting expectations, but that's not always realistic. And I always say that as much as the state assessment or the state assessments clearly serve as kind of like the big ticket, I truly believe that if we deliver that curriculum with an element of fidelity and the creativity that our teachers possess, and I just ask teachers just to make sure that know your kids, know what you're teaching them, and just incrementally know whether or not they've learned what you've taught them. I believe that serves as a clear pathway towards whatever that assessment may be that we may encounter. So a lot of work is happening, and a lot of work will continue to happen. And I just appreciate the commitment of our educators and our leaders who are keeping an eye on the prize in terms of recognizing that student achievement is our top priority in terms of where students are within our continuum. With that said, Sandy mentioned varsity tutors. I think at our last board meeting, the board approved varsity to kind of partner with us. I don't want to put too much emphasis on a third-party group. However, we did engage in the RFP process with several vendors, and varsity did emerge as who we thought would be a good fit for us. So we're hoping that as we approach the beginning of November, we are going to engage in some, we'll call it at-home virtual tutoring, where varsity will deal directly with some families to schedule a twice-a-week tutoring opportunity, one-to-one, with a student who's eligible. We are targeting to begin some specific grade levels and some criteria regarding students who we think would benefit. In addition to that, though, every student in our school district will have the opportunity to take advantage of the resources, the broad amount of resources that they have, and actually also have an on-demand support component where you can get a live tutor, even if you're not assigned to be part of the twice-a-week tutoring virtually. So every student will have an opportunity to at least benefit from having some additional resources. And that's also for whether or not they have a question regarding remediation, but there's also some opportunities there for some enrichment and some extension opportunities for all students. So we're looking forward to that partnership. Parents should be receiving a communication in a matter of days regarding their child's potential participation. Once again, it's optional, it's not a have to, but we believe that we want to make sure there's something supplemental. And as Sandy said, we've tried to balance the notion of those students that we'll be inviting to an in-person beyond the school day opportunity for some reinforcement versus who we think would benefit from some one-to-one support. I'll just do a brief highlight tonight. I think by now most folks in the community are aware of the fact that we have a teacher who was deserving of some recognition. I think at the last board meeting, we had talked about a visit from the Department of Education, the acting commissioner. That was scheduled to occur on October 11th at GNR. That was a little bit of, that was truthful, but that was somewhat of a cover because we wanted to make sure that was serving as a surprise acknowledgement, surprise announcement for Taylor Trost, fourth grade teacher at GNR. She did receive the Milken Educator Award that comes with a host of awards, one being a cash prize of $25,000, national recognition. She's one of 75 teachers across the nation who was presented with that award. So definitely want to commend her and commend anyone who's played a role in her development as an educator in our school district. I will say that I'd also like to just provide a few highlights regarding the month of November, just because it's an interesting month. So, November represents parent conferences for us. So as a reminder, November 2nd, this Thursday, we have pre-K-5 early dismissal schedule only, and there'll be conferences in the afternoon and evening. Next Tuesday, November 7th, Election Day, there will be no school for students. Our staff, our educators will be participating in a professional learning day that'll be hosted here at the high school. Later that week, the 9th and 10th, schools are closed for the annual NJEA convention. On Monday, the 13th, schools will also be closed for in honor of Diwali. So the 14th will be resuming our conferences. We'll have pre-K-5 early dismissal for afternoon and evening conferences. On the 15th, I believe we have evening conferences at the high school. And on the 16th and 21st, we'll have early dismissal days for middle school conferences. The 22nd, we'll have our early dismissal as we prepare for Thanksgiving, and then we'll have our Thanksgiving break recognized on the 23rd and 24th. In terms of calendar, at the November 20th board meeting, I expect to have on the agenda the 24-25 district calendar for approval. In the process of finalizing that and gathering some feedback as we speak. I know in the past, I think Tina posed this question to me, we've kind of gone with like 3 years of an approval for a calendar, which I am somewhat reluctant to do. So I may also have 25, 26 as well. On the one hand, it's good to get, somewhat ahead so people can plan. But I don't want to get too far ahead where we find ourselves making too many revisions when we're looking at that crystal ball that may change 2 years from now. So I'm definitely looking to obviously have 24, 25 ready to go with 25, 26, either at the same time or shortly thereafter. Equity audit. I talked about the district-wide equity audit that took place last year into the summer in terms of concluding the report. We have received that report. I have an executive summary. I'll share that with the board this week. The goal is to have a kind of an update or presentation of sorts regarding the recommendations at the December 11th board meeting. Strategic planning, and I should mention that the equity audit recommendations, one of our goals this year. Connected to that, another focus goal will be the strategic planning process. So we will be partnering with New Jersey School Boards Association to engage in that work. As I've shared before, that will be a community stakeholder process. I'm in the process right now communicating with Jesse from school boards to determine when we'll have our initial meeting. We'll do that with a kind of a strategic planning team first. And then from that, we will then, the way I envision it is that we're going to engage the community regarding, I'll just call it a broader planning team. And that's comprised of parents, staff members, students, and I'm hoping to have a core team of about 40 to 50 participants that can commit themselves to at least 4 meetings. And we'll use that process to identify, really just to say, where are we as a school district, and where are we looking to go? And in order for us to determine where we're looking to go within a 5-year cycle, we need to establish some focus areas and some pillars that serve as a foundation for the school district, and we'll create some goals, some annual goals to move us in that direction. So I'm hoping that when we initially met and discussed this process with them, we had talked about this being a January to May process. I'm hoping that we can at least have our initial meeting in December so we can kind of map out where we're going and creating some communication with the community regarding recruitment of committee participants. Connected to that, I want to just follow up a few board meetings ago. I believe Ed Hirschman, and not only Ed Hirschman, but some of our other PTO presidents during the public comment portion had talked about school resource officers, and they were advocating for the board or the district to revisit that topic. And what I will say is, and I think there was a request for like a community forum or something along those lines, which is well received. So if you recall, there was some discussion with the board. I want to say in 22, there was had a security update presentation, I think July of 22, and a follow-up presentation, I think that was in September of 2022, specifically about Class 3 officers, which is a variation of a school resource officer. So I do recognize, and the board recognizes, that safety and security is something that obviously remains paramount in terms of ensuring that we have some level of perceived protection within our buildings, right? And look, we do have the good fortune of having a really healthy relationship with both of our police departments in the community, and anything we need, that they're always there for us. But in terms of just following up on those comments that were made, I believe that as we engage in the strategic planning process, and I don't want to foreshadow, but I do anticipate that safety and security will potentially emerge as one of those areas that we need to place some priority around. So this topic has not gone away. We definitely will make sure that it gets revisited, and I anticipate that our planning process will definitely serve as an opportunity for us to kind of meaningfully engage in that work. Tomorrow is October 31st, also known as Halloween, and our elementary schools will be hosting their Halloween parades. It appears that there's no rain in the forecast, so we should be okay. Parents, I would just ask you to refer to the most updated communication received from your building principal regarding time, location, and protocol for what that should look like. I'm going to be sending out a communication as a reminder. In the past couple of years, we've engaged in homework-free holidays connected to three breaks. One will be Thanksgiving, one will be winter break, and one will be spring break. The concept behind that is I do believe that when we're talking about having breaks from school, those are opportunities for families to engage in meaningful time together, whether it's traveling. We also have some holidays that have a religious nature to them, and there are observances that students need to honor. And I think it's healthy for our students to have opportunities where they're not feeling the need to be consumed with completing significant assignments or studying for assessments that may interfere with family activities. So I'll follow up with the communication, but typically the expectation is during those 3 windows, students will not be expected to complete homework assignments, and they will not be expected to complete or arrive back to school on that first day subsequent to the break to take a test or quiz. And with that, concludes my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Do any board members have any questions for Mark? Okay. Next is item 5, first opportunity for board member comments. Are there any board members that wish to make a comment? Mike.
Just want to say I was able to be present for the surprise award ceremony for Taylor Trost, and it was really fantastic to see not only the great acknowledgement of the work that she's done, but just the entire school, all the kids were super enthusiastic about it. It felt like an amazing environment being present for that, and it was really great to see.
I as well would like to say congratulations to Mrs. Trost. I don't know if she's listening, but I personally can attest to the deserving of that honor. She was a great teacher for my student, and I'm excited to hear. I didn't know all of her background prior to them presenting her with the award, and I didn't know how well we were utilizing her skill set in district, so that was really great to hear. So thank you, Mark and Sandy and all of you. But congratulations. I did have one question from last meeting, just following up on the syllabi online. I see most of them are there, but are we still expecting some more like video production? Like a lot of the arts seem to be missing. I don't see any of the business classes.
The last I checked, the majority of the TV was up there as well, so you may just want to take a look. Sandy, is there
Okay.
any more that we need to add?
Business is an issue right now. It's the only one that's outstanding as far as I can tell.
Okay, I haven't had a chance to check in a few days, but I just figured I'd bring it up since I was here. So thank you.
That's the only one I know. If you need something else, just let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I also wanted to echo everyone's congratulations of Mrs. Trost. It was a great event, and I was also fortunate to be there. I'd also echo what Mike said, thanking the teachers, staff, and Ms. Emerson at GNR. It was great. The kids were great. So congratulations to everyone. I'd also like to congratulate all the fall athletes, especially the seniors. I hope they enjoyed their last fall season of sports. And I just had one more thing that I say every year at this time. With conferences, it's really hard if you are a parent with multiple kids in the same school to schedule conferences. Especially if you have to log onto the portal and it only opens at a certain time, and if you work or have any other commitments, it's really hard to get on the portal at that particular time. Is there any thought, I know some of the elementary schools do more than one date for conferences. Is there any thought that maybe for the high school that could be an option where we could have an extra day? And I understand that you can schedule a conference anytime you want with a teacher, but I personally have 3 kids, and to try and schedule conferences is very difficult.
Well, conferences are interesting. We can definitely, take a look if there's an additional day, but I'll have to double check. Sometimes conferences are tagged to the teacher contract, so I'll take a look to see what options we have regarding some flexibility.
Thank you. I just can't be the only parent with multiple kids in a school that works, and it's really difficult. And as a parent, you want to meet with the teachers and see how your child is doing,
No, I completely-
and also
I completely
accommodate the
get it.
teachers, because I know it's hard for them too to have another day of conferences, and even to schedule separate conferences with, around that time, especially November, because it is so crazy. So thank you. If there's no other board member comments, we'll move on to first opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak? No one? Then we're going to move to item 6, executive session. The board will leave for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll be back. Thank you. Okay, the board is back. Item 7, committee meetings. Ooh,
It's big, right?
It's
I wanted to
very
make sure you could see it. So next committee meeting is the policy committee meeting. I have 2 policies I want to review with the board. So I'll follow up shortly. And I think this serves as the most up-to-date as it relates to dates, and then we're going to have to kind of refresh our dates, all right?
so then the last committee meeting for the year will be policy on the 20th,
Yeah,
correct?
yes, yeah, it's exciting.
It is very exciting.
All right. So actually, the next board meeting, even though technically we should do it for the year, we will either on the 20th or the December 11th have just a draft of dates for the 24, okay?
Does anybody have any questions about policy committees? All good. Okay, moving on. Item 8.
A, policy 1642.01, sick leave.
Second.
Any questions? Pull the board, please.
Ms. Borgioli,
Yes.
Ms. Lance,
Yes?
Ms. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Patel,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Ms. LaRusso.
Yes. Item 9.
9, mandated regulations for second reading. A, regulation 1642.01, sick leave.
Second.
Any questions? Pull the board, please.
Ms. Borgioli,
Yes.
Ms. Lance,
Yes.
Ms. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Ms. LaRusso.
Yes. Item 10.
Policies to be abolished. A, policy 3432, sick leave, and B, policy 4432, sick leave.
Second.
Does anyone have any questions? Pull the board, please.
Ms. Borgioli,
Yes.
Ms. Lance,
Yes.
Ms. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Patel,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Ms. LaRusso.
Yes. Second opportunity for comments. Or is there any board members who wish to make a comment? Tina? Committee. Oh. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I did have a question. So for item 12E, do I have to wait to get to 12?
Yes.
Okay, then never mind.
Okay, so I do have a comment, and I'll say that first. Mr. Daniels, Ms. Borgioli, and myself attended the NJSBA workshop last week. There was a lot of great opportunities for professional development as board members and otherwise for business administrators, superintendents, and all. Gina and I spoke about maybe doing a quick summary of what we learned. Obviously, we're not prepared tonight, but we'll do some, we'll come out with the top 3 courses or the top 3 things that we learned, and we'll share back in the future in the next couple of meetings.
That'd be great. Yeah, I know it's hard for some of us to attend, so if we could have some sort of summary, that would be really
Absolutely.
helpful.
And I
Thank you.
did bring workshop schedules but I brought back one for everyone. Of course, I left them. They're still in my suitcase, so I'll bring those next time as well. Okay, so Wellness Committee met this evening. David Rowe and Lauren O'Brien presented some information to us, but I'm just going to give a quick overview of what was spoken about. The district administered panorama surveys the week of October 23rd. Those results will be used to provide insightful feedback on student well-being and areas to develop and improve programs. And students do have an opportunity to opt out from taking that survey. It's not mandatory. Past initiatives that we are continuing this year is our Send Hunger Packing program. We're in our 6th year of that program, and that currently serves 150 families to provide weekend meals We have Rise on the Run initiative, which provides over 1,000 snacks per week for students after school. And we have Care Solace. That is the program that connects families and staff with mental health supports. So that program is still benefiting our district a lot. Professional Development Day will be on November 7th, but it's being brought out here because, and that's for our teachers and staff. A portion of the day, actually the last hour of the day, is going to be focused on a joy theme for teacher well-being. So it's basically an opportunity for them to decompress after a long day of professional development. They get to maybe play some basketball, do a walk and talk with other staff, with their colleagues, and hopefully get some good, feel-good feelings from that. Week of Respect involved spirit days and activities promoting positive school climate. That took place the first week of October. JFCS is a small group counseling and tutoring for 7th and 8th graders to build self-efficacy and relationships. JFCS has a great relationship with us over the years, and they have brought to us additional after-school small group psychoeducational activities, plus ELA tutoring tied together, and they would like to offer that to us. They will be using panorama data to identify students, and those students will meet twice a week for 4 to 8 weeks. Once that has been completed, we'll review it and see if we can continue doing that. Originally, they were looking to get some grant money. From what I understand, that may or may not come through, but they still want to do that programming with us. We also have Higher Up, which is a program that provides paid internships to connect students with future career paths. So that will be some interesting information to come look for in the future to see how that program works out. We also had guest speaker Sean Metz, who came in and talked about his personal story on the dangers of substance abuse. He came in to speak to the high school students, and that happened during Red Ribbon Week, which focuses on drug and alcohol abuse. And then we also had some updates on our threat and risk assessments. This year is the first year we're required to keep data by the state for the threat assessments. We did do it last year, but again, how we were pulling data and categorizing data, we're going to use this year as our baseline and move forward. And so we'll have a better, more information next year to report on how the changes, if they stayed the same or not. And as far as our risk assessments, they pretty much stayed the same as last year. That's about it. Oh, wait, one more thing. There's also training for the threat assessments through Sigma. David Rowe and Lauren O'Brien did attend, and they're going to turnkey that over to our counselors, but our counselors will also attend the training as well. Very good. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Hey, Dave, I have a question really quick about Care Solace. Do they work with you if you don't have insurance? Will they still help you? I think that's a really important program, especially with the state of the world and everything that's happening the past month or so. If families are struggling or you do need to find someone, that is a really great program. And that's great to know that they will help you if you don't have insurance. Do any other board members have comments?
Hi, so I wanted to piggyback off of what Tina mentioned about the workshop. At the NJSBA workshop, one thing I was excited to see, one group was written out loud. So because of all that they've done for East Windsor, they were able to be able to have like a table at the workshop. And I did bring back, of course, brochures, because they're actually helping out Newark School District. And they have statistics on how Newark District has improved with their reading and stuff like that. So I do have brochures. And then, oh, okay. No, I have a brochure for everybody.
Chief's child happened to made the flyer.
And yeah, he just
so I didn't want her to
flyer.
have to brag, so I'm bragging for. He has gotten a lot out of Written Out Loud,
yes,
as many students have.
Yes. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. But also, I do have brochures and folders for other things as well that I wanted to share with the group. But like Tina mentioned, we are going to sit down and try to figure out, the best things that, because we don't want to bombard you guys with everything that was there. The next thing is I did mention to Mark, the assistant superintendent, Superintendent Mark, while I was down there, is that they had a lot of student performances. I had to correct myself, right? He's superintendent, yeah. Oh, and board secretary, my apologies. There were so many student performances, and I was actually at the recognition ceremony or the award ceremony for Mrs. Troust, and it was really nice to see the band play for her. And I was even surprised, like, how did the band have enough time to bring on such a performance? Because I think they've only had about a month to practice to bring this on. But I mentioned to Superintendent Mark Daniels that we should have students there as well. Just like the other districts have student representatives, they had musical performances, they even had theater, they had the students talking. We need to recognize our own students because we have some really amazing students here. That was all. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. Anyone else? Nobody? Second opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone from the public that wants to speak? If there's none, item 12.
Motion to approve routine items by exception. Having read the materials received, I move that the board approve the routine agenda items as submitted. A, staffing 10/30/2023. B, HIB report from October 2nd, 2023. C, approved travel and related expenses, virtual and in person. D, approved WCB surplus library books for disposal/donation. E, approved new field trip sites for upcoming trips. F, approved class of 2024 overnight senior trip, May 2024. G, approved new uncompensated HHS club, mental health advocacy club. H, approved new uncompensated HHS club, HHS esports team/club. I, out of district placement. J, out of district placement, Department of Children and Families. K, professional services for students. L, transportation quote. M, transportation bid approval correction. N, all student bus evacuation drills. O, resolution authorizing the use of state contract and cooperative purchasing programs for fiscal year 2023-24, continuation. P, submit project to DOE for approval. Q, approval of board meeting minutes 10/2/2023, and R, bill list of October 30th, 2023.
Second.
Any questions?
Yes,
Jean?
I do have a question about E for the trips. I just need to understand why the high school robotics team is going to the middle school, Williamstown Middle School.
It appears that would just be a competition site. So certain districts just use a venue that they think is available.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to say I think it's great about the e-sport. I know we had talked about that. Was that in the spring maybe or at the end of the year? So that's great to see that that's on there.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I'm sure at some point in the near future, as soon as it's allowed, it'll be a compensated club, I'm hoping, right? And we'll be in some fun competitions and we'll be earning varsity letters and earning awards and college scholarships and all of that. That's all to come.
I agree. The initial club will be obviously engaging students in the high school community. And then depending on the level of participation and rhythm, they're going to see if we can potentially compete on the club level with some other schools.
Is it being publicized within the high school just to make?
It will be after today.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they did some initial gathering. I actually have some other clubs that'll be on this agenda on the 20th, coming out of the high school as well, which is great. a lot of student-driven, student-initiated club activities. They're identifying advisors. So they do a little information gathering to determine whether or not they have enough students who are interested. And then obviously, you know, we will be a little bit more intentional at this point now that the club is approved. So, yes. So oftentimes when an advisor submits it for approval, they've already done some homework in terms of who they think will be interested and how many students. That's one of the things that makes it eligible for a recommendation. All right.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
For the esports, now this is showing that I do not know about esports. Do we know what type of games these students will be playing? Are they violent games or like Minecraft type games?
The games are typically not violent games,
Okay.
but we can give you some more specifics in terms of, but typically esports are not violent. They're more, you know, athletic competition and some other things under that umbrella.
Okay, not Guitar Hero, Dance Dance Revolution.
Oh, maybe.
I'll bring that to them, don't worry.
You know,
If there's no other questions, poll the board, please.
Ms. Borgioli,
Yes.
Ms. Lance,
Yes.
Ms. Murphy,
Yes, abstain from A, attachment 1.
Ms. Patel,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Ms. LaRusso.
Yes.
Oh, excuse me. Can I change mine? I have to abstain from my expenses for the trip.
Okay.
For the workshop that we went to last week.
And that
I
would
do
mean,
as well.
that means we only have 4 people.
I thought we already did that
Yeah.
before, which is why I overlooked that.
Because we don't have 5 on that.
Okay, so we'll just move that. That's item C. We'll move that to the November 20th meeting.
Okay, thank you.
The only other thing I was going to suggest is we take them off of the agenda and pass everything else. Yeah, how about we just take Jean and Tina off? And that way it doesn't hold everything up to the 20th.
Okay, so how do we do that?
I'll tell you exactly what it is. Right, I'll tell you what it is. It's really their names. It's just their names. So I would recommend just removing their names and then it's not numbered.
So for item C, we're going to remove Tina Lands and Jean Bourgeois' line items from that, and we'll approve the rest.
To the 20th.
We'll move theirs to the 20th.
All right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Are we good?
Okay, so then I still vote yes.
Yes. So you can,
Same.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need, you didn't, we still have to continue polling, right?
Well, technically we did.
Oh.
We're okay.
I didn't remember voting.
We're okay.
Oh, okay.
We're good.
Okay, there's no need for a second executive session. Motion to adjourn. Everyone have a safe ride home, and if you celebrate Halloween in